Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this week's Community Leader Telephone Town Hall. My name is Tomas Talamante, and I am Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Muriel Bowser. I want to thank you so much for joining us this week and every week as we discuss the district's response and recovery efforts related to the coronavirus. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone, as I do every week, for the most up-to-date information and resources, you can visit coronavirus.dc.gov. We have a lot to talk about with you today, and we're also allowing a lot of time for Q&A as well on this call. So if you have a question, you can press 0 now to be entered into our question queue. Again, if you have a question, you can press 0 now to be entered into our question queue. If you're watching with us through one of the mayor's social media live streams, you can also ask your questions directly there. We'll be taking questions from the live stream as well. You can also be viewing today's press conference on Channel 16. So many ways to participate today in our weekly telephone town hall. Today we will be joined by Director Dr. Christopher Rodriguez, who's the Director of the Homeland Security Emergency Management Agency for the district, as well as Paul Kine, who's the Deputy Mayor for Education. So before we hear first from Director Rodriguez, I want to remind everyone again, if you have a question, you can press 0 now. Director Rodriguez is going to be going over two very important topics with us before we go into the question and answer portion. Just earlier this week, the mayor released guidance for how to safely celebrate the Halloween holiday and Dia de los Muertos holiday. That guidance is currently posted on coronavirus.dc.gov/phase2. So you can find the guidance on how to safely celebrate that holiday, and we'll hear from Director Rodriguez on that. As well as the mayor just signed before the call a new mayor's order extending the public health emergency. So Director Rodriguez will hit on that as well. So Director Rodriguez, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Tomas, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the call. So as Tomas mentioned, I'll first be discussing some of the guidance that the D.C. Department of Health has put out and on Halloween and Halloween activities. The most important thing, I think, for everyone on the call is that this year traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating is strongly discouraged. Let me say that again, that traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating is strongly discouraged, and that's because that type of activity involves close contact with people not from your household. And so we recommend participating in lower-risk activities and avoiding high-risk activities. And I just really want to go very quickly through, and I can answer some more questions in the Q&A, on what some of those low-risk activities and high-risk activities are. So we did mention, I'm going to start with high-risk, the traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating, going on hay rides with people not from your neighborhood, going to indoor haunted houses, for example, bobbing for apples. Those types of activities are strongly discouraged for this year's Halloween. Lower risk activities, decorating your house and yard in a Halloween theme. Some families will drive by for Christmas, for example, and look at lights and decorations. We encourage that type of activity this year for Halloween. Carving pumpkins with your household, displaying the pumpkins outdoors, and just overall decorating your space for Halloween. You can have trick-or-treat candy hunts, sort of the way some of us do for Easter and Easter egg hunts with members of your own household. Having an online costume party is another way to do a low-risk activity. Some of the more medium-risk activities would be participating in one-way trick-or-treating, where there are individually packaged treat bags lined up at the edge of your yard or outside your door for children to grab and go one at a time. Visiting pumpkin patches or orchards with proper social distancing. Holding an outdoor small group Halloween movie night with social distancing is another way for a medium risk activity during Halloween. So again, I can answer some more specific questions, but wanted to give that level of risk for some of the activities that traditionally happen for Halloween. Tomas also mentioned that the mayor has signed a new mayor's order that extends the public health emergency for COVID-19 to the end of the calendar year, to December 31st. The mayor and the public health team and emergency management team still consider COVID a serious threat, not just to our city, but also to the country and to the states that we have identified as high risk. We want to make sure that folks understand that we are not out of the woods on COVID-19, and the mayor wants to position all the resources of district government to make sure we remain mobilized throughout the fall and winter to the end of the calendar year. And at that time, we will reassess our public health environment and make recommendations to Mayor Bowser for extending the public health emergency. But at this time, we will remain as a city in a public health emergency through December 31st of 2020. Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you so much, Director Rodriguez. And again, we have Deputy Mayor Kine on the call as well, who will be helping us during the Q&A portion of the program. So I want to remind everyone now, if you have a question, you can press 0 now. Also, we thank you, Director, for going over the Halloween guidance. I know Halloween is my favorite holiday, but I want to make sure that I celebrate safely. So we hope that you will download that guidance, print it, share it, and make sure that you adhere to all of the guidelines that DC Health wants us to follow to have a safe holiday. So again, if you have a question, you can press 0 now. Before we go into Q&A, I do want to remind everyone as well, there is still time to complete your census, so we hope that if you have not completed your census, that you do so as soon as possible. You can complete the census today by going online at 2020census.gov, or you can complete the census by phone by dialing 844-330-2020. Again, that's 844-330-2020. So we hope you will complete your census today, we really all want to make sure that every one of us gets counted in the district. So please make sure you complete your census. So we're going to go to our first question, and again, if you have a question, you can press 0 now. I'm seeing several questions coming in through our speaker queue. But our first question will go to Sherry Freeman in Ward 7. Sherry, your line is unmuted.
Hi. I have a school-related question. I am a grandmother working with 2 children doing their virtual learning, and no one could be more excited about school starting, even if it's a hybrid schedule, than me. With that said, I'm aware that the COVID cases appear to be going back up, and wondering if there's a huge effect in D.C. and whether that moving target date of November 9th, the students going back for the hybrid schedule will likely change or not. And what exactly does the hybrid schedule look like? Based on the announcement that came out today, I thought my understanding of it was that a group of kids will go back, and they will be the only ones who go back for that particular term, Monday through Friday, with a half day on Wednesday, so that everybody won't have an opportunity to go back during the second term if they want to. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Chair. This is Paul Kine, the Deputy Mayor for Education. I'm going to answer your question on the schedule, and then I will allow Dr. Rodriguez to answer the part of your question that related to cases in D.C. and what that looks like. So right now, we are very, very excited that we will be able to offer some in-person learning in school buildings for students that we believe really need it the most. And we are starting with our elementary schools, so that's our pre-K through 5 schools, and our education campuses, so that's the pre-K through 8 campuses. And you are correct, absolutely, that the way we are approaching in-person learning in schools is there will be a group of students who we believe are farthest from opportunity during virtual learning, who will be in person with a teacher full-time, 4.5 days a week. In addition to that, we are also going to be offering the ability for families that want it to have their children go to school and to sit with an adult, a caring adult, and do their virtual learning in the school building if parents want that. And that will include meals, it will include support for their technology, it will include access to the internet, and as I said, a caring adult. So we have those two opportunities for families, and again, this will be provided for families that are interested, everyone will continue to have the option to learn at home. And I'll ask Dr. Rodriguez to answer your very good question on the health conditions in the city.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for the question on the health conditions. We have seen a recent increase in some of our cases, but I think it's important to note that looking at the case counts day to day is often not the way to sort of assess our public health environment. DC Health does look at a 7-day rolling average of cases, and right now we are at about 5 per 100,000, which is, in terms of our status vis-a-vis other large cities across the country and many states, we are doing much better. It's important to note, too, with the reopening or the hybrid models of learning in our schools, that is an activity that is consistent with phase 2 of reopening. And we are confident that the work that the Deputy Mayor and his team and DCPS have done will put our children in the safest environment possible given our public health environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor and Director Rodriguez. Our next question coming from online is just clarity on if the public health emergency order extends the mayor's mask order and the mayor's travel quarantine order.
Hi, this is Chris Rodriguez. So the extension of the mayor's order would apply to those conditions that are still in effect that the caller mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. And want to remind everyone again, we do publish the hotspot states list for quarantine every 2 weeks online on the coronavirus.dc.gov site under phase 2. So ensure that if you're planning for travel that you look at that list, as well as we have a travel guidance that we ask residents to familiarize themselves with as well before traveling. So that is also on our phase 2 page on the coronavirus site. We're going to go next to Willie Hunt from Ward 7. Willie, your line is unmuted.
Hi. You kind of already answered my question. I just want to make sure we're still in phase 2 and that the guidance will still be in effect.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Director. Our next question is going to come from Philip Stanton in Ward 3. Philip, your line is unmuted.
Hi. There's quite a virus outbreak right now in the White House. Do we know if this is spread into the area around the White House and wider parts of D.C.?
Hi, this is Chris Rodriguez. So we have, as a city, reached out to the White House to make sure that we have all the information we need. The important thing is, as residents, that if you are not feeling well, and the question was about spreading outside of the White House, and I just want to hit on that point. You all need to make sure that if you do feel that you need a test, you need to get a test and call your doctor. And so the best way that we can, as a community, bring down our case counts, really making sure that we are monitoring our own conditions, and if we're not feeling well, calling our doctor. And if we can't get a test through our doctor, please go to one of our public testing sites, and you can find those on coronavirus.dc.gov. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Director, for response. I want to remind everyone before our next question, you can press 0 now if you have a question to be entered into our question queue. If you're joining us from one of the mayor's live streams, you can also ask your question on Facebook or Twitter, and we will be taking questions from there as well. We're going to go next to Jen Roush in Ward 1. Jen, your line is unmuted.
Hi, I was wondering what the reasoning was for why the middle and high schools are opening later.
Thanks, Jen. This is Paul Kine, Deputy Mayor for Education. I think it's a really good question. We saw early on, as we looked at how virtual learning was going, that virtual learning was actually, in fact, working for a large number of students, but was not working equally well for all. And in particular, we noticed and heard from parents and heard from teachers that virtual learning was harder for our younger students. And so as we developed our priorities for students that we would want to bring back sooner based on where we thought the need was greatest, we indicated that we were interested in starting with the youngest learners, our students who are experiencing homelessness, our students with special needs, and English learners. And so those are the students that we're bringing back in this term. In addition to that, the middle and high school scheduling is, as I'm sure you're very well aware, quite complicated, and many of the courses that our middle and high school students are in are semesterized. And so to disrupt the virtual learning and to cause transitions among teachers in that form was also something that seemed like it would be better suited for a transition between the second and third terms. And then lastly, I'll just point out that there are a number of middle and high schools in DCPS that are indeed beginning to provide in-person learning experiences. There are 13 altogether that we have described, elementary, middle, and high schools that are doing that, and more are sure to come online as time goes on and as principals and teachers begin to develop plans around providing services again to the students that need them the most. So that was our rationale.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have a few questions coming in, I know, but I did want to take this time following up on that question to let everyone know that beginning next week, our Wednesday community leader calls for the next few weeks will be focused on DCPS as we prepare for some in-person learning in Term 2. And so we'll be joined by the Chancellor and other guests each week to discuss the several preparations as we go into Term 2. So we will have more information out on those calls in the coming days, and that'll be the focus. So just wanted to let everyone know about that. So again, if you have a question, you can press 0 now. We're going to go to Joanne Hatfield next in Ward 6. Joanne, your line is unmuted.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. My question is about will we have leaf pickup this year? And this is part of, like, we don't have street cleaning yet. I don't know if that's going to start up. And also, does COVID have something to do with why we don't get street can pickups Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
So this is Chris Rodriguez. Yeah, so I think the question, the caller broke up, but I think the question was about leaf collection. And the Department of Public Works has modified its leaf collection processes this year. They will be providing bags to residents, and all of that information can be found on dpw.dc.gov. For the other questions, I would have to refer to DPW, and we can follow up on that, unless there's something else you want to add.
Yeah, we'll make sure that the MOKers follow up on that. But we, just to reiterate, there is we are excited to announce that leaf collection is occurring still for the 2020-2021 leaf collection season. I know it's felt like it got cooler a little sooner than usual, right? So I've already started to see leaves coming down, but all residents will be mailed these bags. Leaves will be collected twice from each neighborhood beginning November 9th of this year. So again, November 9th is when DPW will begin the leaf collection through the new process. So we want to make sure that for more information, you can go to dpw.dc.gov on that. But the leaf collection, albeit modified, will still be occurring this year. We can go to Again, if you have a question, we're nearing close to the end of our time, but if you have a question, you can press 0 now. We're going to go next to Eric Treger in Ward 3. Eric, your line is unmuted.
Yes, hi. Thanks so much, and thanks for doing these calls. My question is, if it's safe enough to not only have one in-person teaching class per grade, but to also have these additional care classes, which are basically virtual learning, inside the school building, why isn't it safe enough to just have multiple in-person teaching classes? It just seems like for these care classes, things that should be done by a teacher are instead being outsourced to essentially proctors so that kindergartners can still do virtual education. So can you please explain that? It just seems like we should be pushing for more in-person teaching and not a different place for kids to do virtual learning.
Thanks, Eric. It's Paul Kine. I appreciate that question very much, and I think it's an important one. I think our starting point for this was, again, as I mentioned earlier, in the first instance, really trying to prioritize our work with students who are far from opportunity during virtual. And as I mentioned, we've heard from many families and we've heard from many teachers that, virtual learning is in fact working okay for a lot of students, but it's actually not working very well at all for some. And I mentioned some of those students. And so as we tried to resolve the question of how we could ensure we were not contributing to a widening opportunity gap and how we could ensure that those students who really are learning very little during virtual could get access, we are starting as a starting point with these cohorts of students in buildings that have the highest needs and need the most opportunity. And in order to do that, we come up with our kind of staffing and scheduling model then. It's also the case that we're trying to minimize the disruption caused by students transitioning between teachers at this point. And it's also the case that we're trying to ensure that teachers have solid schedules in this complex jigsaw puzzle of scheduling. So we are planning on having our CARES classroom, as you're saying, your word was proctor, staffed by non-teachers, because the teachers that the students are with in the virtual environment, they'll continue to be with even when they're sitting in a CARES classroom. And I would just, I guess I'll conclude by saying we really do see this as a starting point. We want to ensure that this is as safe as we think it's going to be. We want to ensure that we do the cohorting well. We want to make sure our teachers understand the protocols and are well trained. So we anticipate being able to do more as the year progresses.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We're going to go next to Christina Moody in Ward 7. Christina, your line is unmuted.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question about what the city is doing to reinforce the mask mandate and social distancing. I was downtown this weekend near the Chinatown Metro, and I was just kind of shocked at the number of people that didn't have masks and were in line for DC United and weren't social distancing. So I just want to know what efforts are being made to continually remind people to keep their guard up. Thank you.
This is Chris Rodriguez, and as I mentioned at the outset, the extension of the public health emergency to the end of the year only reinforces the importance of mask wearing and social distancing. And a lot of those enforcement mechanisms are taking place in a lot of our establishments and businesses that have reopened, such as restaurants. ABRA, DCRA, DC Health have really put a lot of effort and resources towards making sure that our residents are abiding by the mayor's orders and the mask mandates. And so what I would encourage is if people do see folks congregating, it is important to just reinforce politely the importance of mask wearing. As the mayor has said, we are all in this together, and a large portion, I think, of why we as a city have responded in the way we had is because residents have taken this threat really seriously, and and we need to continue to make sure that we emphasize the importance of those measures. Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you, Director. We're going to go next to Marciana Arnold in Ward 5. Marciana, your line is unmuted.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. It's actually Mercedes Arnold, but I'm a former participant in a Community Connections pilot program called Jumpstart, where senior citizens in the community volunteered to assist Head Start teachers in the pre-K program. I was at Langdon Elementary. I was wondering whether some of those lessons learned from that program could be used to augment the development of out of the regular classroom opportunities for learning at DCPS. One of the specific areas of concern I have is perhaps having for IEP students and alternative protocols such that they do not get left behind in online synchronous learning opportunities. So having worked with Jumpstart, I think there are a lot of things that could help DCPS at this time. And then the benefit for elders in the community who may be unemployed like myself is that it gives them the opportunity to get into public education without having to qualify for the praxis exam. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you very much for the kind of volunteering of information, sharing that, and also for the question you've got. I think it's really important that we continue to learn from experiences and organizations like the one you've described, and I know Jumpstart, and I'm familiar with it. I know that principals that I know who have worked with it are extremely happy with it, and it's exactly the kind of learning that you're describing that we have to look at as we're considering other ways to supplement and support our learners during this time, and not only at this time, but I think as we look forward to next school year, so school year 21 and 22, and we think about the accelerated learning that's going to be required during our recovery phase, I think Jumpstart will be an excellent opportunity for us to get extra supplemental help there. On the question about whether we can, in fact, use a program like Jumpstart now, I will simply share that it is actually not consistent with our health protocols to have some of our older members of our communities in our schools, given their higher risk factor. So we've considered those questions, and that's just where we've landed in terms of a health perspective.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have reached our time for this week's call. I want to remind you, we still have a few questions in the question queue, so if we weren't able to get to your question, members from our Community Relations Office will be following up with you to make sure that your question does get answered, so we'll make sure that no question goes unanswered. I want to remind you we will be back here next week, next Wednesday, at 6 p.m. next Wednesday, but we will be back next Wednesday. We'll be joined by the Chancellor and other members of DCPS, so we look forward to telling you more about the in-person activities coming in Term 2 at our DCPS schools. So again, I want to remind everyone, for the most up-to-date information, you can visit coronavirus.dc.gov. Please download all the guidances, familiarize yourself, especially with our new Halloween and Dia de los Muertos guidance. We all want to celebrate, but we want to do it safely, so please familiarize yourself with that. And then again, please, if you have not done so, please complete your census today at 2020census.gov. You want to remind your neighbors to fill out their census. You can carve 2020census.gov into a pumpkin. Great reminder for your neighbors as they pass by. But again, we want to make sure that everybody completes their census, so please do so. Thank you for joining us this week and every week, and we will talk to you soon.